Hi guys, it's Jessie, and tonight I wanted to do a little demonstration and talk to you guys about the new Stampin' Blends markers that released just yesterday. There are so many people that are so excited about this release, and I just wanted to make sure that you were all aware of what they were, how to use them, and of course how you can get them. So let's get started. So the new Stampin' Blends markers are these brand new markers right here. They come in 12 different shades of color. They have both a light and a dark to each shade, and then they also have an ivory and a copper. So I want to tell you a little bit about what these markers are not, and then I will share with you some features and benefits of what these markers are. So these markers are not the same as the Stampin' Write markers, which I know many of you already have. So the biggest difference between the two of these is these are an alcohol-based marker, and these are a water-based marker. So the alcohol-based marker is very much like the Copics or the Prismacolors, those kind of markers that you know of there. These markers are more similar to like a Crayola type marker, and can be used for watercoloring or basic coloring, but often when you color with these markers, you're going to see some of the strokes that we'll leave behind. However, when you're coloring with these, you're not going to see those brush strokes because it's all going to blend together. And these are primarily what these are used for blending and highlighting and color shading so that it seems seamless. So let's talk a little bit about these markers. So these markers are a square barrel, which you can see here. So when you set it down on your desk, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to sit right there, so you don't have to worry about it rolling off your desk or anything. In addition to that, it is dual tipped. So on this tip, you have your brush tip, which is like a paintbrush. And then on the other tip, you have the bullet fine tip, so you can get into those nooks and crannies and crevices and things there. So I really like the way that these tips are put together. I really like the way that these tips are put together so that you don't have to worry about the chisel tip, and you can basically do everything you want to do with your coloring. So in addition, we talked about how they have the two ends. They also, on the caps here, have these grips so that they're easy to take on and off. And they have the airtight locks, so you can hear them snap on and off, so that'll keep your markers from drying out. The other neat thing is that they actually fit with each other, so you don't have to worry about losing your lid or having it roll off the table and not being able to find it, because it's right there on the end of your marker. So one of the other benefits of these markers is, like I mentioned before, there's 12 color shades with that, and they made it really, really easy. So each color shade that you get has a light and a dark shade. So for example, this is the Cherry Cobbler, this is the light Cherry Cobbler, and this is the dark Cherry Cobbler. So you don't have to know any fancy codes or gradients or steps to know if you are going to have the right color combination or not. They make it super, super simple, light and dark. So with that, you can purchase these markers individually, a set of 1, or you can get them in a combo set, so you get the light and the dark together, a set of 2, or you can purchase the entire collection. And the entire collection looks like this. So you get all of the different colors, and then you also get a color lifter, which is very similar to a color blender. Some people call it a color eraser, but we call it a color lifter because it actually lifts the color away that you've already laid down on your paper. And then you also get an ivory and a copper color, and these are to be used for like skin tones and things like that. But you can use them for coloring all different kinds of things like trees and woodland stuff and that sort of thing as well. So keeping that in mind, let's do some coloring, and I'll show you some of the differences and things that you can do. So this card right here was actually done with the markers, and it was done with a couple of different colors here blended together. We used the Old Olive blending here. This is the copper and the dark crumb cake, and then we used the Daffodil Delight and the orange pumpkin pie here, and then we did a little bit of different blending up here. Now, one thing that you want to remember when using these color blending markers is that you want to use Memento ink. This is the ink that is best described as being the most compatible with these inks because it is a water-based ink. So a good tip to remember is when you're using alcohol markers, you want to use water-based ink. And the reason why is because if you're coloring on a water-based ink, it's not going to run and smear because the alcohol isn't going to blend together. However, if you are going to use an alcohol-based ink, the color will blend and smear. So you don't want to use a StazOn or any other ink that's going to be an alcohol-based ink. Just like if you were coloring with these markers that are water-based markers, you don't want to use the Memento ink because it's a water-based ink, and again, it'll blend and activate together. So that's just a hint and tip that you want to remember. So in addition to that, there were some people that asked if you can use the Stampin' Up! Ink pads with your alcohol markers, with the Stampin' Blends markers, with these ones here, and the answer is yes. However, you want to be careful because there was a little bit of bleed over, and we'll go over that in just a little bit, and I'll show you a demonstration there. So before we get to coloring, I kind of want to show you the difference. So these were colored with the Stampin' Blend markers, and then this one here was colored using the watercolor technique with the Stampin' Write markers. So you kind of see the difference where this is a much softer look. There's a little difference in the blending there, and this is a much more bold, saturated, crisp look. So that's kind of the two. And here you can see them both together to see what we're looking at. Okay, so let's do a little coloring, and I'll show you some things along the way. So we are going to get started here with this is the copper color blender. And I'm going to use the fine point tip just to do a little coloring of the stem here. As you can see, it gets into the nooks and crannies as it goes. And I went outside the lines there a little bit on purpose because I want to show you how the color lifter works as well, to be able to lift some of your color away. So we're just going to do some quick coloring, and then I'll show you a little bit of the shading and blending. Now, personally, I like to color with the lightest color first, and then add my shading or my shadows with the darker color, and then blend it over with the light color again. Now, you don't have to do it that way. You can do it with your dark color and then add your light color. There's no proven way to do it so that there's a right way and a wrong way. It's whatever you feel most comfortable with. So now I'm using the dark crumb cake, and now I'm going to use the brush tip rather than the fine point tip because I have a larger area to cover. And just color it in, and like I said, it's kind of like a paintbrush. But you can see the color lays down nicely, and look at those brush strokes just disappear. It just gives that full saturated color, which is super, super pretty. And it makes anyone an artist, which is kind of nice, because I'm not an artist, but I like to color. So if I wanted to add some shading or some shadows in here, like right here where this detail is, I can come back in here with my copper and just give it a little bit of depth. So as you're looking at that, you can see where those lines are. Well, I really don't want the lines there. I just want it to be a little bit darker. So as I add that in there, I'm going to come back with my crumb cake and just color over it and smooth it out. And it's just going to blend it in and take that harsh edge away. So it just gives a little bit of a shadow to show you that depth. But again, you don't see exactly where I laid down that color. So it's a nice masking technique with the blending. So same thing with the leaves. So say we wanted to color our leaves and then add some depth to the veins. So I'm going to grab the light old olive and I'm going to color my leaves in. And this color is a very saturated color, which means it is going to bleed through on your paper, and that's good because it's actually the saturation which allows you to blend while the color is wet. So these markers do dry pretty quick as far as when you're laying down your color. So you don't want to work in super large areas. You want to work in fairly small areas and relatively quickly so that your ink is activated with the moisture of the ink that you've already laid down. So as you can see here, I'm just going over the veins a little bit just to add that texture and detail there. Now, if I want, I can leave it like that because that shows a little extra depth to it, and I might like those crisp, harsh lines. But if you don't want it like that, and let's do another leaf just for comparison. We'll do this leaf over here, and this leaf will actually blend out to show how it softens it when you do the blending. So they'll be side by side, and you can see those. So same thing, just gonna lay the color down, make sure it's good and wet. And then we're gonna take our dark color here and just highlight where those veins are. Super simple. Like so. And now we're actually gonna blend it out so that it softens it up. So see how it takes that harshness of the lines away as I'm blending it through? And you can just keep going over it. You can't really overcolor with these, so you don't have to worry about messing it up. But see the difference between this one, which is blended through, just has a little bit of darkness in that area here, and then this one, where it's nice and crisp, defined lines. So that kind of gives you an idea of the difference between blending and non-blending, and just adding your shadows and your highlights. So the other thing that I wanted to show you with these is you don't just have to use the color families together. If you want to mix and match all the different colors together and blend those out, you can do that. Whatever way your creative path takes you, you can certainly use. So let's take a couple of colors that aren't in the same color family, the light and dark together, and let's color with those and see what we get. So I'm going to take the yellow Daffodil Delight, and this is the dark Daffodil Delight. So thinking of those fall leaves, even though we're kind of starting to move into winter, but we're just going to add some color to our leaf here. And now, instead of starting with the light Daffodil Delight and moving to the dark, I'm actually going to grab the pumpkin pie. And this is the dark pumpkin pie. So I'm going to do the same thing with my leaf veins here. Just add that color in. And then it works exactly the same. So then I can blend that out with my yellow as well and kind of soften that look. So with that, I could have used my red, my cherry cobbler, and done the same thing. And maybe we'll try that down below. We'll see what cherry cobbler does with our Daffodil Delight. We'll see this one together because I haven't tried this combination, but we'll see what it comes up with. And that's the other thing. These are just super fun to play with and come up with different ideas and color combinations and ways that they work. So this is the light cherry cobbler. So that's a little deeper color. But let's see what happens once we blend it out. See if it softens up. Hi Faith, hi Lydia. So it does soften it. It actually does look more like a fall leaf. It doesn't look like that harsh bold red like we put on there initially. So that gives you an idea of playing with the different colors. So now let's take a look. This is our color lifter. Like I said, a lot of people refer to it as a color eraser or a color blender. So what this does is it actually lifts the color of where you laid it down. So in a way, it kind of acts like a color eraser because it picks up that color. So you can use it in a variety of different ways. So you see right here where I went outside the line. So I can actually take this color lifter and I can rub it over where I went outside the line. And you actually want to push the color back to where you want it. You want to push it in to where you want it. And it literally just picks up that color. See that? And while it's wet, you'll be able to see where the markings are, but as it dries, it will just disappear. It's wonderful. So you can see that it's almost gone. Almost gone, right before your eyes, kind of like a Tide stick. But having said that, if you have a really big area that you messed with, you just keep going over it and keep pushing the color back. Let it dry a little bit and then go over it again and push the color back. And it's just like, you know, a beautiful oops remover. So it works great. The other thing that you can use this for is not just, you know, working on some of those mistakes and boo-boos that you have, but you can also use it to highlight certain areas. So a lot of people use this, the most common example I can think of is to add your little highlight or your glow spot on your balloon. But what you would do is you would just take a spot, and we'll say right here. We'll say the sun is just hitting it right here. And as you're coloring, it's just going to lift that color. See that? So if we did the same thing, say over here, we'll just say that the sun is hitting it just right and just lifting that color off the leaf. So you're getting that little bit of reflection. So all kinds of things that you can do with that. You can create patterns, you can create accents. Again, you can create some highlights on, say, an animal's body, or even in an eye, if you're looking for the accent or a twinkle in an eye. So lots of things that you can do with the color lifter. And that's why we don't want to just call it a color eraser, because there's so much more that you can do with it. So that's something to remember there. Now, let's take a look at if we were to color using the classic Stampin' ink pads. So these are both stamped in soft suede and not the Memento black ink, which remember is the one that's recommended for using with these markers. So if we were to color over our leaves using the Dark Daffodil Delight, which I started to do down here, you'll see that there's a little bit of bleeding, just a tiny bit. So what I would suggest, if you want to stamp with the colored ink pads from Stampin' Up, is that you certainly can, but I wouldn't go back and forth over the ink too much, because it's going to pull it and activate it. But you could certainly do like one layer over it, or do short quick strokes over it and get away with it. But I think if you're going to color a whole heck of a lot back and forth, you're going to see more of that bleed from the activation within the ink. So just kind of keep that in mind. I know that was a question that I was asked quite a bit. So with that, that is our Stampin' Blends. And like I mentioned, you can get a whole collection of them, which is a ton of colors, plenty for you to get started with to color all kinds of sorts of things. So we have the greens, we have the browns, orange, reds, blues, and of course the skin tones, as well as the pinks and grays, just the whole color family rainbow. There are going to be more colors coming, but with this being the first release, they wanted to get the primary basic colors out there so that you had a good full collection to start working with. So this is what you got here. Now, having said that, they also released a project kit that coordinates specifically with the new Stampin' Blends markers and allows you to play. So this is the new Color Me Happy project kit, and it comes with these 4 card projects and the envelopes to go with them. It has all the embellishments inside, and then these are actually lined images for you to color in. So you can see it gives you a great way to practice and play and work on your blending and all that sort of stuff. The great thing about this is that everything comes in the pack, so you're good to go. So along with that, I am offering an ordering special right now that if you want to order any of the blends, either an individual blend marker or a set of 2 that they come in, or the entire collection, and you use the host code, which I will post in the comments, you will also get a sampling of some lined color paper that you can use for practicing. This will come in your thank you card that I will send to you personally, so you'll get a sampling of stuff that you can work on and just kind of color and relax in your spare time. So with that, just so that you're aware of the pricing, an individual marker comes at $4.50, a set of 2 comes at $9, and the set of all 26 plus the color blender comes at $121.50. Of course, that's before shipping and tax, but of course there's always the best deal in the entire catalog, and that is the starter kit, and that allows you to purchase $125 worth of product for just $99 with no commitment. You also get free shipping with that. So if you wanted to grab all these markers, now is the perfect time to get it with just the $99 special, and I'd be happy to help you walk through that as well. So remember, if you're going to be getting any of the Stampin' Blends, head over to my website at designsbychance.com/stampinup. Use the host code, and not only will you get a free sampling of paper, but you'll get these wonderful new coloring markers. They are truly wonderful. So if you have any questions or I can help you out at all, just give me a holler and I will talk to you all later.